Trump has declared a war, not a traditional one, but the economic one. However, equally consequential.
Starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that.
It resulted in a ripple that made the world economy scream Mayday.
One of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head.
C'est important, et c'est tout le travail qu'il faut faire par filière, que les investissements à venir ou que les investissements annoncés ces dernières semaines, ils soient un temps suspendus tant qu'on n'a pas clarifié les choses avec les États-Unis d'Amérique.
Ireland believes in open and free trade and that the imposition of tariffs is bad for the world economy.
One question that everyone is asking is why? Why is he doing whatever he is trying to do? And is there any logic to the chaos? So what if I told you that there is a logic or a rationale? At least as per Mr. Trump there is. And we are going to discuss just that.
No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. That promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept.
Let's start with the big news this week. President Trump announced a pause on some of his tariff plans. But, and this is a big but, he's still keeping a 10% base tariff on all the goods coming to the USA from all over the world. A tariff is basically tax that government puts on the products imported from other countries. Think of it like an extra fee added when buying something from abroad, which makes those goods more expensive. Now this pause may sound like that Trump is backing off, but don't be fooled.
Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate.
The very fact that he is sticking with the 10% tariff and doesn't seem worried about how it will affect American families suggests something bigger. It hints that trade plans are more ambitious than they might appear. This isn't just about tweaking a few things. It's a part of a much larger idea called intellectual Trumpism. I know, with the situation we are in, it sounds like an oxymoron. So what does that actually mean? Okay, so intellectual Trumpism sounds something from the college lecture. But it's really just thinking behind Trump's trade policies. Here's the deal. Trump and his advisors believe that tariffs aren't just about raising money for the US government or protecting few American factories. They see them as a way to fix of what they think is a broken global economy. Their big idea? Countries like China, Germany and Japan are creating problems in the world economy by producing way more stuff than their own people can buy. They call this overproduction. To sell that all extra stuff, these countries supposedly dump it on the USA, where Americans end up buying it. This creates something called a trade deficit. A trade deficit happens when country imports more goods than it exports. In other words, the USA buys more from other countries than it sells to them. Trump's team say that this isn't fair. They argue that countries like China use sneaky tricks to make this happen, like giving their companies subsidies, basically free money or super cheap loans to produce more. Meanwhile, they make it harder for their own citizens to spend money, so those citizens don't buy as much. The result? Tons of extra products that end up in American stores. Let's try to zoom in on those tricks Trump's team is talking about. In China, for example, the government sometimes give direct subsidies to companies that export goods. That's like handing them cash to make stuff cheaper for Americans to buy. They also use something called financial repression. Financial repression is when government keeps interest rate super low or control who gets a loan. This makes it cheap for business to borrow money. But it hurts regular people who save because they earn less interest. It's like government is favoring companies over households. Even in developed countries like Germany, it's a bit same but different. They give subsidies to big companies, think car manufacturers or tech firms, so those companies don't feel the pinch of high energy costs. So why are energy costs high in Germany? Because Germany keeps pushing hard for the net zero climate goals, which can make electricity pricey. But while companies get a break, regular German households pay for the full price of their power. The end result in both the countries is almost same. Their governments shift money from the regular people to those big producers, expecting the US to buy all those extra stuff their own citizens can't afford. So why do Americans keep buying all this stuff? They have a choice. a finance professor named Michael Pettis say it's because the US has to. They argue that when countries like China save too much money because their people aren't spending, they send that extra cash to the USA. Americans turn that money into things like stock, bonds, and even government debts, and then use it to buy those countries' extra products. It's like a big cycle. They save, Americans spend, and that creates the US trade deficit. But here's where it gets tricky. This argument makes it sound like US has no choice or control, like it's just a victim of other countries' plans. The truth is that US is making these choices too. There are policies that make it harder to produce things, like strict regulations or limitations on energy production. At the same time, there are tons of policies that encourage spending. For example, programs like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac make it easier for Americans to buy houses, sometimes more than they need. Subsidized student loan push people to spend big on college degrees, even if those degrees don't always lead to great jobs. And then there is earned income tax credit, which can help low-income families but sometimes makes it less appealing for them to work extra hours or work even harder. The earned income tax credit is a tax break for low and middle income workers in the USA. It meant to boost their income, but it can get complicated and sometimes affects how much people choose to work or spend. Since today's topic dives into spending and economic choices, here is a shout out to Nothing Marketing, our parent agency driving top-tier digital marketing solutions and supporting us, that is MBFI's mission. Their performance marketing services deliver exceptional growth for medium-sized businesses. Think targeted ads on Google or social media that boost click, leads, and sales, powered by smart data and AI. They've worked with clients across America, Canada, Australia, and India, helping those brands grow exponentially. Plus, they also offer SEO and social media management to round it all out. MBFI stays unbiased and in depth thanks to Nothing Marketing clients who support us to keep this channel free to share honest insight with you. Ready to grow your business? Check out Nothing Marketing. Link is in the description. Now back to how entitlement program shape the US economy. The biggest spending driver through is America's entitlement programs. Things like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These programs send huge amounts of money to people, which they often spend on everyday stuff. Entitlement are US government programs that guarantee certain benefits like healthcare or retirement payments to eligible people. They're called entitlements because you are entitled to it if you match the criteria. The US pays for these programs by borrowing money, often from foreign investors who buy American debt because it's super safe. So Americans are basically borrowing from the world to keep spending at home. Trump's team say that this is why the USA has a trade deficit. It's a choice to prioritize spending over producing. So how can the US fix this trade deficit? Trump's team think that tariffs are the answer. By taxing imports, they hope to make foreign goods more expensive, so Americans buy less of them. They also think that tariffs could help US companies make more stuff domestically, creating jobs. But here's a catch, tariffs make things more expensive for USA consumers. That means less money in American pockets for things like groceries and clothes. One of Trump's advisors, Peter Navarro, even admitted that tariffs could cost the US economy $6 trillion over 10 years. That's a lot of money. Think higher prices for everything, phones to cars. The other option is reforming entitlements, cutting back on programs like Social Security or Medicare to spend less and produce more. This could help balance the US economy by encouraging businesses to grow domestically. But here's the problem. Entitlement reform is super unpopular in America. People love their benefits and their politicians are scared to touch them. Remember when George W. Bush tried to tweak Social Security back in the day? It was a political disaster. A matter of fact, Trump even tried that formula, but it backfired on him like anything. Entitled reform means changing programs like Social Security or Medicare to spend less money, often by reducing benefits or changing who qualifies. It is a hot button issue because it affects millions of Americans. Here's where tariffs get risky. While they might sound like a way to protect US jobs, they could actually hurt businesses in America. A lot of American companies rely on imported parts, think car manufacturers or tech firms. If tariffs make those parts more expensive, it could mess up their supply chains and even force them to cut jobs. Plus, tariffs don't really help the US produce more efficiently. They just make everything cost more. Entitlement program, on the other hand, could boost the American economy by making it easier for businesses to grow, which could lead to better wages over time. But like I mentioned earlier, that's a tough sell politically. So where does this leave US? Trump's betting that tariffs are an easier way to fix trade deficit than tackling entitlements. He thinks Americans will be okay with paying higher prices if it means standing up to the countries like China. But will they? That's a big question, and it's one Americans will answer as prices start to change in coming months. What do you think? Are tariffs worth it for the USA, or should other ways to balance the economy be considered? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, please like, share and subscribe for more such interesting content. See you soon.